Hey everybody, and welcome back to Fantasy Football. Game week 2 has happened, and I had a absolute nightmare, as you can see. 22 points. It was generally a pretty low scoring week, I think, with the average of 41, but I had a team that did absolutely nothing. No one scoring above 2 points, obviously apart from the captain there who got 4. Wouldn't have mattered who was my captain. Not even anyone on the bench did anything. Just a shocking, absolute shocker of a week. If we go to the Plays League, I am pretty much bottom. These two guys, I guess, just joined this week, so I'm above them. But otherwise, 64 points from 2 weeks is really bad. We've still got Mustafa at the top with 146. That's great. Just 42 for the week, which, you know, is slightly above average. I think the highest in our league was the 64 there, I think, from Johnny Morris. And with no disrespect, that's not, a absolutely demolishing week, like 100 plus points like some people were getting last week. Pookie, we'll talk about him. De Bruyne, Aubameyang, Sterling, Neves. Yeah, good players, but obviously, just a lot of other things just didn't really happen. I think for most people there. So yeah, not having a great start to the season. What are you going to do, basically? We're going to go through the results and have a look at the matches. Delayed this one for a couple of days. I usually like to do them like just after the match, but I thought it might be nice to do it a bit midweek. That way we can preview the games coming up and we can talk about the games that have happened, and it lets me get over the fact that Crystal Palace lost, because that always hits me hard. So first game we'll look at was Monday night's game, which was Wolverhampton Wanderers against Manchester United at Molineux. 1-1. Man United taking the lead through an Anthony Martial goal, with Ruben Neves equalising there. Big talking point, I guess, of this game was the penalty miss from Pogba, although I shouldn't say miss, I should say the penalty save. Pogba's penalty was saved, so I always feel like that's slightly different to just totally missing the target. Like, I feel like, if we're being honest, a penalty, you shouldn't miss the target with it. That's kind of unacceptable for a professional footballer in a way, but for it to be saved, sometimes it happens. I wouldn't say it was particularly the best penalty he's ever taken in his life. A lot of people are saying that he shouldn't be taking penalties because he's missed a few. Leo Messi has missed a few penalties. I don't see anybody going up to him saying you can't take penalties. Penalties get saved. They're not automatic goals. That's an important thing to remember. There's barely a footballer out there who has never missed a penalty in their life or had it saved. I want to say Matt Letizia was the only one in the Premier League, and I'm just literally going to look this up. But the thing about penalties, I think that people don't understand. Okay, Matt Letizia missed one. He scored 47 times from 48 attempts. And he has missed a penalty. And I think Ricky Lambert as well scored 32 penalties in a row. So there are players out there who are really good at penalties. But there are also, you wouldn't call Ricky Lambert like the most skillful player in the world, with all due respect to Ricky Lambert. So penalties, I feel like, are somewhat down to technique, but also a lot down to guts. Having the guts to go there and take that penalty is, that's worth a lot, I think. And people underestimate that, I think, especially when you have 40,000 fans or plus baying for you. That's a big thing. People were saying Rashford should have taken it. Well, listen, Rashford scored his penalty last week, but it wasn't the most convincing penalty in the world, I would say. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came out and said that Man United have 2 preferred penalty takers, of which Pogba is one. So he missed a penalty. Obviously, we saw, following like Tammy Abraham's abuse, we saw abuse aimed towards Pogba, racist abuse. It's disgusting. I can't believe that. I on one hand, like, on a very kind of like primitive level, I get like other fans abusing players for whatever reason, because from looking at their mentality, you would be like, okay, they're trying to get some sort of edge over that player. They're trying to wind them up. They're trying to psych them out. So they're saying like the most horrible things you can to make that player feel, terrible or whatever. And maybe their game's going to be off a little bit. I can kind of understand that logic in a way. It's obviously disgusting and isn't right. And firstly, it's just terrible sportsmanship, like absolutely terrible. Secondly, it's racism, which is just wholly wrong. It's a ridiculous thing that still exists in 2019 in any country in the world. We're such a world where you can travel to pretty much any country in the world. We live in countries which are so multicultural now that racism is just ridiculous and fundamentally, utterly ridiculous. But for people to racially abuse players at their own club, like, what next level is this? The mind boggles, really. He missed a penalty in a football match. You still drew 1-1. That is not a terrible result against Wolves away, by the way. That's a pretty good result. The mind boggles here. Same with like Tammy Abraham. It's like, if you're a guy who, if you're a fan of Chelsea, surely you want Tammy Abraham to do well. Like, you can't get another striker in this season. He's one of 3. Like, if you racially abuse him, surely you're racially abusing Batshuayi. Surely you're racially abusing, Rudiger. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, and I mean, that's the thing. These people are mentally retarded. That's, they're not emotionally or mentally mature. That's the problem with them. They can't think about things in a reasonable way. And I mean, Harry Maguire is saying that, there needs to be like tighter, controls on social media. I feel like that's a little bit short-sighted, saying like, oh, you should have to back up, your social media accounts with, valid, identification and stuff like that. And I mean, listen, I get where he's coming from, and like Twitter does need to do more to shut down accounts and track people, IP addresses and things like that. If they're doing things, and I understand people have ways around it, but like, we don't want to turn into this like dystopian state where everything has to be, everybody can trace everything you say, because while that's fine in cases like this, look at stuff going on in Hong Kong, and we don't want to kind of get into that situation where companies being asked to give over information about staff who are protesting and stuff like this. Like, and I know like we're different countries to that, but we don't want our government controlling our social media platforms, because they do a lot of good. There are a lot of bad sides to them, and that needs to be worked on. But they do a lot of good. So I don't necessarily agree with him on that, but I definitely agree that more needs to be done, because it's ridiculous. Like, it's just mind-numbingly ridiculous that like people will resort to that kind of thing in like 2019. I mean, it's just utterly stupid. Like, by all means, you can criticize Pogba for missing a penalty. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. People were saying, Gary Neville was like inflaming it by, criticizing, Pogba and the penalty. He's not inflaming anything. He's not telling people to abuse Paul Pogba. He's doing his job and criticizing a player who, for all intents and purposes, probably should be scoring that penalty. It'd be the same thing if any probably Man United player took that and missed the penalty. Like, you can criticise a player for missing a penalty. Sometimes it's a magnificent save, but it doesn't inflame or cause people to go out there and abuse people. It's like this argument which I kind of hate, when someone, like, you see it a lot, will do a video or a piece or something like that on somebody, and then their fans will go and attack that person, and it's like, nobody's responsible for what other people are doing. If they're inflaming it and saying, yes, go to this person, abuse them, whatever, then absolutely that's wrong. But you're allowed to criticize other people. This is about free speech, going back to the Twitter thing. It's like, people are allowed to criticize them, but there are consequences, and racism is just fundamentally wrong. It's illegal. You will get arrested for it. So that isn't free, I'm afraid, and it probably shouldn't be. So yeah, that's my piece on that one. Neves scored a really good goal. We all know he's capable of doing stuff like that. Man United having the possession and the touches. Wolves are a bit more of a counter-attacking side anyway. So, but yeah, fair result, I think. Both of them will probably walk away with that relatively happy. Both had 2 shots on target. A pretty even match overall. Again, I don't think that's a bad result for either club. Wolves' top 6 ambitions, so they don't want to be losing, to teams who are going to be competing for those positions. And Man United know that going away to Wolves is a tricky fixture. So, they could argue and go, well, we were within a penalty of scoring that goal, of winning that game. And Wolves would be like, we just drew comfortably almost with, one of the best sides in England, arguably. So relatively good result for both. I wasn't looking forward to this one. Sheffield United, Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace lose to Sheffield United, the promoted side who I had down to get relegated. Although I think I said about Sheffield United, which was that, I think I said anyway, that I kind of felt in a weird way that they had the best chance out of the 3 of staying up, because they've kind of haven't gone crazy. They have this core kind of like these core players who they've strengthened in certain areas. They've retained some players like Dean Henderson, who they had last season on loan. They've made some decent signings. Players like Luke Freeman looked really good. McBurney's probably a pretty good signing for them, but they haven't gone crazy and brought in loads of like players on big contracts or anything like that. Every single one of their players, apart from Besic here, is either English or Irish. Sorry, either British or Irish. Sorry, I should get that right, John Fleck. And I'm not for any second saying that having foreign players in your team affects things, but from a point of view of all these people have played, all their lives in English football. There's no someone coming in and getting used to the Premier League or for English football. Sure, there's not a lot of Premier League experience, but English football-wise, these guys been there, done that. They have these interesting overlapping kind of full centre-backs system. I'm not 100% sure that will make it through the whole season like that. Like, they probably will get found out. But what they've shown is that they're going to be a really tough side to beat. They're going to work really hard, and Crystal Palace just weren't on their game, and they can't afford to not be on their game this season. They haven't strengthened well. If you look at that Palace side, there's not one new player in there. Every single one of these players was with us last season. We do have some injuries. I'm in excuses mode here, particularly our centre-back partnership of Sissoko and Tompkins, which is really good in my opinion, are out injured at the minute. So I don't want to be that guy, but things like that do obviously make a big difference. Zaha's perhaps not quite back to his best yet, and we just basically don't have a striker right now. Benteke's trying hard, bless him. He had a good chance, but he's I've never seen a player kind of just disintegrate like he has really. A lot of people criticising Crystal Palace and saying like, oh, they're in trouble, blah, blah, blah. Let's not forget Crystal Palace drew with Everton on the first game of the season, which, everyone was like, oh, Everton are going to be challenging for top 6 this season. They could be the one to break through. And Palace, didn't concede to them and drew 0-0 and weren't. And to be fair, they probably should have won a little bit. Sheffield United, Palace had 4 shots on target, well saved. I thought Henderson played really well in goal. I don't want to say we were unlucky. Like, I think Sheffield United did deserve it because Palace were not on there, just weren't at the races really. But this is one of those ones where a little touch of magic from Zaha, something like that, and it could be a draw or even a win for Palace. Like, I'm not too concerned right now. There's always those banana skins. These guys come up, they've played together a lot, and they have this real will to win. And I think for Sheffield United, they've got to kind of have that shock factor for a lot of teams. And they've got to get points on the board early, because I think it's going to be difficult for them come the second half of the season. We saw this, I think, a good few seasons back with Blackpool, and they had that crazy start. They were doing really well, and then they just kind of collapsed after Christmas because, I don't know, really, the weight of the Premier League just became too much. People found them out, and as a result, we saw what happened. And it happens to other teams as well. You see teams who, they're up flying, and people are like, oh my God, is this team going to be, they're going to be able to crack into that kind of top 8? And they often kind of fade away a little bit. So I don't necessarily feel that to change my prediction of Sheffield United getting relegated. I think there's still a pretty good chance of that. And I think if we go to the tables, they're 8th at the minute, which is brilliant. But they've played Bournemouth and Palace so far. So we'll see kind of what comes from there. We'll say though that some of the teams down towards the bottom are a lot worse than I had originally considered. So Newcastle are looking pretty hopeless right now. Southampton, they're not looking good at all. I mean, let's not beat around the bush yet. Southampton have conceded 5 and scored 1 goal and lost 2. They're not looking good, and they're playing an informed Brighton at the minute in their next game. I said with that Southampton, Watford, I think Watford have got enough quality to kind of push on, but they need to get some points or else things will start being worrying. And there's some teams down the bottom here, which could surprise some people. And to be fair as well, Norwich got a good win. We'll talk about that, but we'll see. I've always said, like, kind of with Crystal Palace in a way, is like, just stay up in the Premier League. You just need 3 teams worse than you, and that isn't actually a crazy way to look at it, because sometimes there's some terrible teams. So yeah, we'll kind of see. Chelsea Leicester. This is a weird game as well. Chelsea obviously lost the Super Cup on penalties, but I do feel like regained a little bit of I don't know if pride would be the right word, but maybe a little bit of hope, or a little bit of confidence, I guess, from that, even though it was a loss on penalties, because they didn't play terribly against Liverpool. They didn't play terribly in the first half here against Leicester. In fact, they played very well. Mason Mount got his first goal for the club. Arguably justifying his place in the team when you look, and he's got players like Barkley and Kovacic on the bench, and you're putting faith in this young Mason Mount here. That's a ballsy move, like, without a doubt. That is a ballsy move, and it's good to see him get on the score sheet there. But second half, Leicester just played him off the park. They absolutely did. This seems to be a bit of a problem. We saw in the Man United game, Chelsea kind of collapsed. And then here Leicester, by all accounts, should have won this game. How come this is happening with Chelsea? It's interesting because you look at this team, and there's a lot of experience in this team. Azpilicueta is a very experienced kind of defender. Jorginho as well, Kante, these guys. And so how come they're kind of getting overrun a little bit? It's interesting. I don't know. I don't have the answer. Leicester doing okay. I think at the minute, I think they'll be really disappointed not to have won this game. I'm going to be the first person to kind of put out there with Leicester and say that I'm not necessarily 100% sure Jamie Vardy is the right man up front for them. I think at the minute he's looking a little bit like the weak link, in my opinion. And I'm just saying in my opinion because I feel like Brendan Rodgers' style is very much trying to play kind of more possession based, passing it out from the back. that type of thing. Jamie Vardy is very much a counter-attack, get behind the last kind of guy type of player. So, yeah, I don't know kind of where to go from there, but he is obviously a club legend, so you can't just... And he is their best striker, without a doubt. You know, there's no one there who would better suit the style or come in and do better than him, I don't think. I just think that maybe they're, you know, looking next season, they probably have to start looking at who they're going to get to possibly replace him in there, because I'm not sure he is going to be the guy to lead Leicester forward. Ndidi, though, with a good goal. And yeah, so Chelsea languishing down towards the bottom of the Premier League. A tough start, but I think they will be disappointed, especially considering they've conceded 5 goals. You know, I know there was the 4 to Man United. Norwich next, and I mean, they've got to get a win, haven't they? Even though they're away, they've got to get a win. Just for confidence. I'm not saying like, oh, Frank Lampard's going to get sacked or anything like that. I don't believe that. But I'm just kind of like, they need something to... They just need something to give them that confidence and push them on. Because if you've got 2 losses and a draw after 3 games, or you know, or even 2 draws and a loss, you know, that win in the league, that first win, you know, time flies in the Premier League. Before you know it, you're in trouble. Or before you know it, you've already blown your chances of getting into Champions League. And I mean, without doubt, I think that will be their aim this season. But they're struggling at the minute. I still believe they have the talent to do it. I still believe this lineup is better than Leicester's. And you know, this bench is full of talent as well, compared to Leicester's. Just it's taking a little while, I guess, to click with a new manager, which is fine. It does. You know, no one's expecting them to turn up and suddenly, you know, be the greatest passing side on earth. But yeah, they need to kind of step it up a little bit. Arsenal 2, Burnley 1. Good win for Arsenal. Type of game that they would struggle with. They've had a really good start, I think, because they've had 2 potential kind of Arsenal banana skins. And I'm not saying that suddenly they're a challenge for the league. I'm saying that they, you know, potentially have, you know, some banana skins which they've managed to overcome. And in previous seasons, an Arsenal team may not have been able to overcome that. It looks like they've got a bit of a gem on loan in Ceballos. If you listen to Arsenal fans, he's the greatest midfielder in the world, but they always think that, don't they, to be fair. He looks decent, though. He does look decent. And they've missed that little bit of kind of creativity in midfield, which, you know, I think they wanted players like Mkhitaryan to kind of do, or Ozil, and they haven't. And, you know, Ceballos looks like he could be the right guy for that, you know. These youngsters are still doing quite well. They went for Lacazette and Aubameyang. I often say they should play both of those, and guess what? They both scored. Yeah, I know they don't play that away because blah, 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 but I still feel like you got to play your best players. And if you take out Lacazette or Aubameyang and put on any one of these players, arguably, listen, I don't know about Pepe yet. We'll leave him out of that. But if you put on any one of these players, they're a far worse player than Lacazette or Aubameyang. Far, far worse. Yeah, and I think Arsenal should be, in away games, should be looking to win those games, not just maybe grind something out. So, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, a good performance, I think, from Arsenal. Ashley Barnes scoring again, and you know that fair play to Arsenal. Usually, you know, they score, maybe they're in the ascendancy. Burnley get a goal back, and sometimes that can mean that Arsenal fall apart a little bit. They didn't. You know, they pushed on. Aubameyang scored a really good goal. He is looking like a very... I mean, the one thing you can say about Arsenal, to be fair, like, I think their recruitment has been terrible over the last couple of years, but I think in Aubameyang and Lacazette, they got that right. Like, they did make some really good signings in those two. I think defensively, they've signed some shockers. Well, David Luiz looked all right. I don't think Burnley will be too disheartened with this. Nick Pope did make some good saves. And I know Sean Dyche was bemoaning about diving and all sorts of malarkey afterwards, but he always does, doesn't he, really? And Sean Dyche loves a good moan about everything. So yeah, we've got Arsenal second in the league, Liverpool next, and I mean, this is the type of game where we'll see what Arsenal are made of here. You're away to Liverpool. There's no shame in losing away to Liverpool, but we'll see what type of performance we get out of Arsenal. You know, it's very, very different to, you know, Newcastle and Burnley, with no disrespect to those two teams, although Newcastle are pretty shit. Burnley are much more disciplined, but away to Liverpool, I mean, Liverpool haven't been playing on fire this season. You would still see a Liverpool win there, though, wouldn't you? So that would be a big question there. And if Arsenal can get something out of that, that's a massive bonus for them, and that could, you know, we'll see from there really what's going to go on. So Aston Villa 1, Bournemouth 2. Aston Villa looking not great, I've got to say. Josh King with penalty, and then Harry Wilson scoring his first goal for Bournemouth. And then Douglas Luiz with a bit of a wonder goal to kind of get one back. But really and truthfully, you know, Aston Villa, just looking at them, I've just seen them struggling. I don't think they're a bad side. I just struggle to see where the goals are coming, to be honest with you. When you look at Bournemouth, there's so many goals there. You know, Callum Wilson, Josh King, you know, Fraser, Wilson now on the bench. You know, players like Solanke, Ibe. There's a lot of goals in that team, and that's a good win for Bournemouth. They'll be happy with that after, you know, drawing with Sheffield United. They've now played 2 promoted sides, and I don't think they will probably be fairly happy to walk out of that with 4 points. Don't rate their chances against Man City next week, especially as they don't tend to change their style and try to play against Man City, and it generally doesn't work. But we'll see. As for Aston Villa, Everton up next. You know, the Tottenham game you could write off, I guess. The Bournemouth game, I think they would have wanted to get at least a point out of that at home as well. At home to Everton next. I don't think Everton are particularly firing right now. They should be wanting to get something out of that, I think, to kind of kickstart their season. Brighton against West Ham. For all accounts and purposes, Brighton very unlucky not to win this, I felt. Much better side than West Ham. I really have not rated West Ham this season. It's a good goal. Chicharito, you know, doing what he does best. And it's a good goal for Brighton. But I've been really impressed with Brighton this season. I think Graham Potter is a very good manager. We'll see kind of how we go, and but I kind of rate Brighton a little bit. Yeah, they look pretty good. I think they'll be really disappointed to have drawn that game with West Ham. You know, that's a win and a draw, isn't it, for Brighton? You know, scored 4, drawn 1. They're in 5th. They've got Southampton at home next, which, for all accounts and purposes, what I've seen, I can't see them not winning that game, to be completely honest. And then, you know, we'll see where they kind of go from there. So, yeah, Graham Potter, I think, doing a good job. I don't think West Ham are very good. Like, everyone was kind of... I feel like Pellegrini, as a manager, is quite overrated. You know, I want to say this quietly, just in case any West Ham fans get really angry with me, but I don't feel like he's the right man for the job for them. I know he won the league with Man City, but then he went off to China for like 2 years or something like that, I think. And yeah, I look at their team and I see a lot of very good players, and I don't see a team that is playing very well right now. Maybe they've got some players to kind of come back. You know, some injuries to kind of get through, but they were outplayed by Brighton, and if you're a team which is aspiring to get into that top 6, which I think with the money they're spending, that is what they're aspiring to do, or at least top 8, they're not doing that right now. And I think they're probably got to be a little bit worried about how things are going. 2 games in, though, we'll see. Who have they got next? They've got Watford. So struggling Watford at home to West Ham. Ooh, yeah, we'll see. So yeah, Watford losing to a 10th minute Bernard goal. Both these teams don't feel like they've really kicked on. I think Moise Keane is going to be good once he gets a few games under his belt. I think that Everton have got really good midfield, very strong midfield, decent defence, decent keeper, ball of good save. It's just the striking. I think that is a problem. Like Calvert-Lewin, I've said this time and time again, I don't feel like he's good enough for the Premier League. St. Tossen hasn't set the Premier League alight, and I don't think Everton play in a way that suits him anyway. So I think Moise Keane, if he can get firing, which I'm 100% believe he can, once he gets a little bit used to things, then and he's still a young man, but I think Everton will be all right. But they've had a disappointing start, I think, drawing with Palace. Well, I guess they haven't. They're 4 points in 2 games. I think they'd probably take that, to be fair. They're ninth. But they've looked like they've struggled in those games a little bit, I think. So we'll see kind of what comes from that. And I definitely think Watford will be very disappointed with their start. 2 losses. Brighton was a big loss at home there, 3-0. Blew them away. And then 1-0 to Everton here. Stats-wise, just the 2 shots on target. Yeah, just didn't... I don't know. Something about them this season. People were saying, like, Javi Gracia, I think is their manager, looking very tired, and yeah, you kind of wonder how long he's got left, because we know Watford do like to chop and change their managers when things aren't quite going right. On paper, they've got a really good side, I think, but I don't really feel like they have strengthened this season. Danny Welbeck, I mean, yeah. So they could have a long, hard season, Watford. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll probably, if they keep struggling, they'll probably change their manager, but we'll see. One of the big talking points, I guess, of the week was Norwich's emphatic 3-1 win against Newcastle United. The one from Newcastle being a very late consolation goal, I would say. Newcastle looked terrible. I don't want to take anything away from Norwich because they played really well. 63% of the possession, 8 shots on target, 15 shots in total, way more passes. Timo Pukki scoring a worldie, with his first hit. Literally, I think it was his first touch of the game, pretty much. You can't take anything away from Pukki. Like, it's a wonderful hat trick. He is a fantastic finisher. People are out there saying, like, oh, maybe it's not such a surprise. He had a great season last season. There's a massive difference between scoring the Premier League and the Championship. And I would say, with no disrespect to Newcastle, although will be disrespectful, he has scored a hat trick against what essentially is a Championship side here. So, yeah. Joe Linton and Almiron, it's not clicking with them at the minute, is it? It's not a terrible midfield, but things just aren't working right for Newcastle at the minute. And, I don't want to be that guy who's like pissing on the Timo Pukki fire, but, I'd be surprised if he gets more than 15 goals this season. I'm going to say that now, even though he scored 4 in 2 games. Just because I think Norwich are going to face a lot tougher opposition than Newcastle this season. If he does, absolutely fair play to him. And to be fair, if he gets 15, that's a really good thing. And I think that would probably keep Norwich up if he does manage to do that. If he scores them, in the right times, in the right games. But I'm not on the Timo Pukki bandwagon yet. His record at other clubs is pretty abysmal. And you can sometimes turn around and you can have players who will just work with a manager, and clearly, Norwich are working with him, and he's full of confidence, and you can't underestimate that, because I've seen players with fairly limited skill score a lot of goals just because of confidence. And I don't want to necessarily say have one season wonders, but maybe a couple of seasons and it just working. I mean, if you look at Timo Pukki's career, he's played for clubs like Seville, he's played for like Schalke. Schalke, he scored 8 goals in 37 games. Celtic scored 7 goals in 26 games. Bromby scored 55 goals in 130. And then Norwich, he scored 33 and 45. So clearly Norwich is working for him. He's smashing it in. Has he, found the club, or the manager he's probably always wanted to work in? And to be fair, he's 29. He's in his prime right now. So, yeah, he can go on and do it. And it's great that he has been given this chance in the Premier League. Norwich didn't just turn around and go, he's a championship striker, we're going to go and spend 25 million on a player who's scored 15 goals in the Bundesliga and hope that he's going to score us all the goals. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. It's good that they stuck with him, and he deserves his chance, and I hope he does do well. Like, genuinely, it's great to see these stories of these players kind of coming through. I just wouldn't be jumping on the Timo Pukki bandwagon just yet, but it's a great result for Norwich, and I'm still not convinced they're going to be able to stay up. Chelsea next. That's a massive game. I love it when we are 3 games in and I'm already talking about massive games for the season, like season-defining games. But you never know, because the thing is, in the Premier League, to stay up, you don't necessarily have to play well the entire season. You just need that little spell where few results go your way, you get that bit of confidence, you start playing a little bit better, you get a few wins under your belt, maybe like a 10-game period where you manage to win like 5 or something like that, and that can set you up for the rest of the season. And Norwich has had a great win. Their confidence is going to be up. They're playing Chelsea, who have been a little bit battered recently, look a little bit fragile at the back, probably don't want to be coming up against a guy who just scored a hat-trick in his last game, and a very good hat-trick at that, by the way. So yeah, we'll kind of see what happens there, and it's at home for Norwich. I just have this feeling like Frank Lampard would rather be playing a lot of other teams than Norwich City currently, but we'll see. Again, it's the type of game where Chelsea are coming there and they'll be the favourites, and Norwich can kind of be like, if we get anything out of it, it's a good result. So the pressure will be on Chelsea there, which doesn't always work out. Southampton-Liverpool, we saw Liverpool win. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest game from Liverpool. They still were miles better than Southampton, in my opinion. I think Southampton look very off the pace right now. Mane, people are often like, who's the best player out of this front three? Undoubtedly a couple of seasons ago it was Salah. Last season, I think we started to see a bit of a shift in Mane stepping up to be the main guy. And this season, it could well be Mane's season. He is a quality player. And I think because of other signings, like, he kind of came in a little bit under the radar, weirdly, even though they spent quite a lot of money on him to get him from Southampton. I mean, look at some of Southampton's players that they've had. If you look at Liverpool, they love a Southampton player, don't they? Van Dijk, Oxlade-Chamberlain came from Southampton. Not straight directly, but he did come there. Sane, Lallana, yeah, they love a Southampton player. So Southampton's one of those teams where you're like, if they'd have managed to keep hold of some of these players, who knows? I'm kind of tipping Southampton to get relegated. I don't think they're good enough to stay up. That's kind of my opinion on that one. I don't think Liverpool had a very good game. When you look at it, they played the Super Cup. I think they stayed that night in Istanbul. They had to fly back in the morning or something like that, and they barely had any time. They played Thursday and then they're kicking off 3 o'clock on a Saturday. It's ridiculous. So that is a massive banana skin for them that they have avoided there, I think, and they will look back on that and go, that is a very good win for us. Very good win. and fair play to them. Liverpool are quite good at just kind of grinding out a result. Man City are the more prolific ones where they are just kind of relentless, and sometimes they'll win like 2-1, but they've dominated the game. Liverpool are more kind of like they'll win 2-1. Maybe they haven't played that well, but you wouldn't have looked past them to win the game, So they're not quite, well, they're nowhere near functioning their best, but that's 2 wins in 2 for them. And that's literally all you can ask, isn't it, really? They avoided the opening day banana skin of playing a promoted team, and, they avoided the banana skin of coming back from the Super Cup absolutely knackered and playing away to Southampton. So, to be fair, if you were going to play any team, it would probably be Southampton you wanted to play right now. I'm not trying to, diss Southampton, because I think Newcastle are worse than them at the minute, but they haven't looked good in my opinion. They've got Arsenal next, much tougher ask, but at least they've had a week to prepare for it. So we'll kind of see from there, really. They need Alisson back. I'll tell you that much, because that was a howler from Adrian that let Ings in to score, and he was pretty lucky that that didn't cost them. But they'll be a much better team when if they're winning without Alisson, then that's all you can ask, isn't it, really? And then the final game of the week was the 2-2 draw between Man City and Spurs. If you look on paper, like, how the hell Man City didn't win this game, I don't know. I mean, I've managed to get to the video this far without talking about VAR, because I hate VAR. Not because I think it's a bad thing for the game. I actually think it's a pretty good thing for the game. I hate it because it just dominates conversation. It was supposed to take away from the conversation. It was supposed to turn around and say, okay, we've cleared this up. This is a foul or whatever. But people still have to talk about decisions all the time. I was listening to a phone-in on the radio, and this woman was talking about, the referees, how bad they were, and they're hiding behind VAR and stuff like that. And it's like, have you refereed a game of football in your life? Like, it's probably harder than playing the game, and get like 100% of the decisions right. It's incredibly difficult, especially at the breakneck speed the Premier League goes in, all the stuff that can kind of happen at super fast speed. It's very easy to sit at home and watch a replay and go, oh, how did the referee get that wrong? That's where VAR is supposed to come in and just clear that up and turn around and go, well, the referee got it wrong, so this is disallowed, or this is a goal. And I would say that people have bemoaned VAR this season. Some of the reasons they've bemoaned it are utterly ridiculous. So, for example, Spurs have this goal disallowed. Sorry, Man City have a goal disallowed right at the end, which would have won them the game effectively. Interesting. I don't know if it actually... Oh no, here it goes. Yeah, so Gabriel Jesus, he scored late on. It showed that it came off the hand of Laporte. Obviously accidental. He wasn't trying to, but the rules state that any goal scored when in the build-up play there it has come off, a hand or a part of the body, you can't score, your arm or whatever, then the goal is disallowed. That was very clear, and VAR is 100% right on that one. Offsides, I know people have this problem with it, and it's like, they're turning around saying, oh, it doesn't help the striker or whatever, it's too close, it's ridiculous. But it's right, the rules are right, and the VAR is sticking to the rules, and that's what they are. You can't hate VAR, you have to hate the rules. I understand where people sometimes come from, they're like, oh, it's horrible to score a goal and celebrate, and then it gets taken away or whatever, and fans don't know when to celebrate. I'm sorry, that happens all the time in football with the linesman. Like, how many times has a goal gone in and then you've suddenly been cheering it, and then you just happen to see a linesman flag up? Yes, there's a shorter period of time, but it's still the same thing. Do you see players not celebrate because they're just waiting to see if the linesman flag goes up? I know sometimes they have a cheeky look over, see if his flag's gone up or whatever, but yeah, it's just something people have to get used to, I think. It's here, and it's here because people moaned so much about referees that they just couldn't allow any sort of human error. So they were like, we have to bring in this because, we sit here on Match of the Day constantly all night judging how people are refereeing these games rather than actually talking about the football, because I haven't even talked about the football in this game yet, which was a very entertaining game. But it's just ridiculous, really. I can kind of understand Man City's frustration, because this is the second time it's happened to them against Tottenham. And VAR's disallowed a goal, but it was right. So you can't argue, can you? I think Pep afterwards was like, can't argue. It's like, it's right. It's just frustrating, obviously. As for the goals, De Bruyne putting on a bit of a crossing masterclass, just two great assists from him. Really good goal from Lamela. It's just weird though that Man City gave him so much space and time to shoot, and he just did it. And then Moira with a good header. I think he literally just came on the pitch. He literally came on the pitch, like first touch, scores header. I think you definitely could say Spurs did not deserve to get anything out of that game, but they did. And sometimes that's Man City's shortfall is, 30 shots, 10 on target, and they draw 2-2. Defensive errors cost them in that game. They shouldn't have conceded 2 goals. Not with the lineup they have. So, first blood, I guess, has gone to Liverpool in the battle of the top 2. Man City have dropped 2 points. We'll see how that affects them. They've got Bournemouth next. Maybe on paper, it's not going to be a terrible result. Like, you could argue that Spurs are capable of getting a result against Liverpool. I just think if you look at the stats and how much Man City dominated, that's 2 points dropped from them. Spurs 1-1, drawn 1, not playing at their greatest currently. They got Newcastle next. I think it's safe to say they'll probably win that game, though. I'd be very shocked if they didn't. Even how poor they were against City, if they just play at that same level, they'll beat Newcastle. I'm pretty sure of that. Man City are a phenomenal team. It just wasn't their day, I think, to be fair. And they made some errors, which they shouldn't have done, but they could have scored 5 or 6. But they didn't. And sometimes that's what costs you the league when it's 1 point in it at the end of the season. We'll see kind of what goes from there. So let's have a look at the upcoming fixtures. So Friday game is Aston Villa Everton. Again, it'd be quite interesting for this. I think, as I said before, Villa really need to get something out of this game. I'm not sure they will, though, unfortunately. I think Everton will probably win that. Norwich against Chelsea. Again, really interesting game this early in the season. A struggling Chelsea up against probably a pretty confident Norwich following that demolition of Newcastle. Pookie on fire. Let's see what happens there. Brighton Southampton. I can't let past a Brighton win there. With how poor Southampton have been. Man United, Crystal Palace. I think Man United win this game, I'll be honest with you. Crystal Palace do not look good right now, and unless we get Tompkins and Sacco back in that centre partnership, we're looking pretty weak at the back there. And Man United have got more than enough to cause us problems. I don't think they're playing brilliantly this season, but they're good enough to beat Palace, I think. Sheffield United, Leicester. That'll be quite an interesting game. We'll see if Brendan Rodgers can, what he can do against Sheffield United, this Premier League club. A draw there would be great for Sheffield United, I think, really. That would really kind of see them through. Watford, West Ham, 2 teams need a win. 100% need a win. West Ham got 1 point. Watford haven't got any. Both very much underperforming so far. Both will want to win. And Liverpool, Arsenal, which... that'll be a pretty good one. I'm just thinking, will I be able to? Might be able to watch that game on Saturday. No, I'm working Saturday night. I can't watch that game. Damn, that would have been a good game to watch, I think. Sunday, Bournemouth, Man City. Obviously, you never can look past a Man City win when they're playing anyone other than probably Liverpool. Spurs, Newcastle. I mean, it's got to be Spurs, right? I mean, come on, Spurs. You should win that game. And Wolves, Burnley. That could be a really tight game, I think. Burnley are much better this season than they were last season, despite having pretty much exactly the same team. But they're still 1-1, lost 1. So they'll want to get something out of that. I could see a draw there, I think, really. In terms of my team, I don't know what I'm going to do. The Spurs one, I'm looking at and thinking that bring in a Spurs player, Harry Kane captain. We've got. Let's look at my team. So we've got. So these guys are playing against Arsenal. He's playing against Man United. I don't fancy our chance of keeping a clean sheet. So Van Aanholt, Zaha, I'll probably keep in. I'll probably switch in. I think I might. Shall I leave Keane? He hasn't been playing. He's been a sub. But Aston Villa, I could see him getting a goal. Pulisic has looked really poor, I've got to say, so far for Chelsea. Jimenez, I'm definitely going to make him captain Kane. And I definitely want to bring in another Tottenham player, I think, who's been playing. I think if I'm going to do a transfer, I think I'm going to lose Pulisic and then try and bring in a Spurs midfielder. And Ndombele, maybe not. Lamela, oh, I don't know. How much have I got? 8.4. I'll have to have a think about that anyway. Yeah. Sort by team Spurs. Moira, Ericsson, Wing, Skipper, Celso. Maybe I'd put in like Ndombele. I think he's looked pretty decent so far. He's quite an attacking midfielder. I'd probably go for him. Why do they still have Trippier down there? It's weird. Literally assisted in a game for Atletico the other day. Yeah, I'd probably put him in. I haven't got any more transfers, right? Yeah. I've still got 2.3 million remaining. So do I take a hit now and get someone good in? I'm thinking instead of Keane, if that gives me 9.2. 9.2. Rashford. Not quite enough for Firmino. Not quite enough for Lacazette. That's annoying. Not quite enough for Jesus. Might go Rashford. I'm just going to confirm it and take the 4-point hit. At this point, I might as well. So we'll go for that and see what happens. Yeah, I think we'll kind of leave that. I probably want Gomez in for. I don't want to drop Zaha because he's capable of doing good stuff, but yeah, I don't know who else. I can't play two at the back. Might put in Holebas instead there. Fancy Watford to finally get a win there. And let's save that. So he's captain. Vice captain would be Rashford. I think he's going to score against Palace. So we'll leave it at that. Till next time, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.